Mama. Welcome to the Mrs. Mummy PhD podcast. I am your host, Dr. Michelle Gibbs, and this podcast exists to help scholarly mamas like you to achieve your life and academic goals without sacrificing what matters most. Here, we're changing the overwhelm, juggle, struggle narrative around what it means to be a mama on an academic journey to one of empowerment, fulfillment, and purposeful success. So how do we successfully navigate these journeys? Well, first, we need the space to embrace this unique blend. Let's begin by saying yes to creating a life that feels as good on the inside as it looks on the outside, because that's when we truly become purposefully whole. So get ready for the most non-traditional, unconventional, and revolutionary approach to PhD motherhood, because one thing I have learned over my many years of experience on this journey is that if you want something different, you have to do something different. But you must be brave enough to think differently first. So, Mama, are you in? Fabulous! Let's begin. These are our journeys of becoming. Mamas, you are in for an absolute treat today. Today, I've got the amazing Natalya Androsova PhD. I am so happy that she's here with us today. Natalya currently works as a writing and dissertation coach and has master's degrees in English and linguistics together. She's got masters in human resource development as well as adult and higher education. And she's also got a PhD in communication and culture. Natalya, welcome to the show. I am so looking forward to this conversation today. It's so lovely to have you here. Of course, we connected on Instagram and really formed such a genuine, authentic connection that has led us here today. So before we get into the episode, would you like to introduce yourself and then share with us one surprising thing that people may not have guessed about you?
Thank you so much, Michelle. It's so lovely to be here. Thank you for your invitation. I'm so excited about this conversation. I think the most surprising, I think people get surprised by the fact that my inner critic is probably the loudest of them all, or at least that I have an inner critic. So being a writing and dissertation coach, people often assume that the writing process is completely effortless and I don't have a voice living in my head, but that's not true. It's well and alive and it talks to me every time I write, but it's not a problem. So I think that's what I will say.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you are just being honest and open. And the reality is that we all have these inner critics that really prevent us from achieving the writing goals that we've set for ourselves. And you've just been able to, well, the sense I get from you is that you've been able to turn that inner critic into falling in love with your writing again and really just enjoying that process. And so I love this idea that writing can actually be fun and enjoyable. You've talked about, when we've had our conversations about your own shift from finding writing really stressful to actually really loving it. And I know that many of our Scholarly Mama listeners would love to hear more about those little light bulb moments that really changed things around for you. What was that journey like?
Thank you so much, Michelle. Such great questions. Well, I think like everyone else, I suffered from self-doubt and lots of insecurities. I'm an international student. I was an international graduate student in the United States, then in Canada. And so I had all these stories in my head telling me I can't succeed. I can't even use the language, let alone write. I'm not a good writer. Writing is hard, like all those stories that I've heard somewhere else. And I've interpreted them, I've integrated them, and I've believed them. And so I think the first shift happened when I realized, okay, they can be there. My inner critic may be there, but I don't have to believe this voice that speaks in my head. I can be separate from them. Am I that voice? And the answer was no. And so what was what was almost like a daily fight with my inner critic, a street fight in which it always wins, became this beautiful relaxation of, oh my God, I love writing so much that I don't even mind your being there. So I stopped fighting with the inner critic. And I realized it's just a bunch of thoughts I've learned from some teachers, parents, from peers. We pass those writing myths, carefully to each other in our PhD programs, how hard it can be. And so I realized that I can still create and enjoy my process while the inner critic is suggesting things. So I fell in love with another voice. I've discovered there was always another voice of the writer within, just a quiet voice that wanted to express itself, was curious about the world, cared about the world, wanted to contribute and, make discoveries in PhD or in real life. And so I just started listening to it. And that was a voice I could trust. I learned from experience. And so I've included both of them. I've made a change in my alliance. I've aligned with the voice of my writer within as opposed to the voice of my inner critic. And it's very easy, I think, for all of us to see the difference between them. One is harsh, negative. It tears us down. It makes comments about our writing, our ability, our self-worth. And the other one is just creative, expansive, loving, gentle, and kind. And so I just found that I had so much more energy, ideas, and I could thrive so much more when I chose my alliance again. And then the inner critic didn't even have to leave. I would give it an imaginary notepad and a pen and say, yes, 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 you can keep writing all your comments about me and my writing. I'll be right here working on my dissertation and my books. And so I just discovered the joy, and I realized I didn't need the voice in my head to get quiet, for the inner critic to go away. I just had to break up and say, listen, I'm in an exclusive relationship with my writer within, and you're no longer welcome, but you can stand outside the door and, pin your comments to the door. So it was just a change in my relationship to the parts of myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And you said a couple of things there that I wanted to pick out. You mentioned how talking about self-trust and that relationship with ourselves, and obviously our belief system about, who do we choose to believe? Do we choose to believe the inner critic, or do we choose to believe the writer within? And something that really caught my attention when we chatted before was around those beliefs that we have for ourselves about writing, and how those beliefs mirror our beliefs about ourselves. And I'm just curious as to, how does this show up when you're working with PhD students, for example, particularly those who might be juggling motherhood and PhD life?
For sure. Thank you so much. Yeah, you're absolutely right. In noticing that, or in emphasizing that very important point. I do find that beliefs we have about our writing are not that different from the beliefs we have about ourselves. Yesterday, I was working with a writer, and she is older than me. She's very successful. She's a high achiever. She's months away, maybe 1 month away from submitting the whole draft, and she is a mother. So I think some of the major, I'm sure, I mean, there's hundreds of stories, but some of the major ones are permission to prioritize ourselves in our writing. You know that well, I know. So it's that delicate dance, that parenting PhD dance, where, or even today, I spoke to another scholarly mama just now before our session, and it's permission to love our children and give them as much attention as we love ourselves. So including ourselves into that love. Because if we give all our time to others, there will be resentment, and everyone has to pay. But if we prioritize, if we allow ourselves to prioritize ourselves and our work equally, or in some delicate, nuanced, complex ways, but we give them time and attention every day, somehow, in the 5 minutes you have, in the 10 minutes you have, then you then you stop self-rejecting, because we're capable of giving love to others and ourselves. So we have that muscle. So that's one thing. Another way these beliefs show up is pressures we put on ourselves and our writing, and they're the same. So yesterday in my conversation with the student, what I've learned, it was actually a major shift, and I was so proud because for 6 months um, she's been struggling, and then she stopped. She experienced the harsh feedback before, and then in that rejection, she rejected herself. With that rejection, she adopted it, right? And so yesterday, she told me that in the morning, she was willing to stop rejecting her work and herself, and she was willing to
Mm.
embrace.
Mm.
So embracing our work and embracing ourselves is not different. It's allowing all the imperfections in our draft, allowing all our words to come out awkward, clumsy, imperfect, and still love them and still love ourselves and allow ourselves the journey of discovery where we don't produce perfect sentences or paragraphs. We just walk our journey honestly with integrity. We focus on one thing at a time. And I think the final thing I will mention is removing. We do best, what I noticed I do best, and so do my students, when we remove pressures from ourselves and our writing. And that can be, in the form of perfectionism, just demanding the sentences to march out from underneath our fingers as we're typing in, and start marching in perfect sentences in perfect order. It's not the nature of the mindset. Getting to know our writing and getting to know ourselves, and then accept and love ourselves and our writing radically. And then from that self acceptance and self trust, trusting ourselves that we do have the discernment to know good writing from bad writing or good sentence from bad sentence, that on the next revision, we'll come to it, we'll see and say, wow, I can make it so much better, still from love. And, just humbly allowing ourselves to be human and our writing to be work in progress. And then just, I think, trusting then that we can keep moving and accepting our process and just getting super curious as opposed to demanding. So we can meet ourselves where we are and our writing where it is. And from that we can keep moving forward. Does that make sense? So like pressures, perfectionism, prioritizing ourselves and our writing, and I forget what else, but also not knowing that we can only thrive outside of self-criticism. Self-criticism and thriving, they're not compatible. We can't grow.
Yeah. I really relate to a lot of what you've shared, because as you go through this journey, you, especially, when you're in academia, you're on a PhD journey, part of the process of that is receiving feedback and criticism sometimes. And that can lead us down a spiral of self-doubt. So let's talk about self-doubt for a moment. As you mentioned, the student that you were working with got some negative feedback, internalized that, and that started to, revive that inner critic and bring out that self-doubt. So it's something that we all deal with, I know, but what kind of self-doubt patterns do you see coming up specifically for the PhD students that you work with? How do you help them push through that self-doubt to actually making progress in their writing?
Thank you so much, Michelle. So, yeah, self-doubt. I think when we don't know ourselves enough, we experience self-doubt. We adopt somebody else's standards and we say, oh, academic writing should be like this. I should sound like that, like those smart people. I should write certain sentences in a certain way, and I should sound like someone else. So we deny ourselves our own journey of discovery. We deny ourselves our own way of thinking, being, writing, processing information. And so I think maybe discovering, like getting very curious about our own uniqueness and what are we like? What do we write like? What are our strengths and what do we sound like on paper? I think the first journey is discovery and curiosity and embracing our own way. So I precisely, like just now, I coached someone who stopped writing like herself because the supervisor and a friend who's an editor gave her feedback, which was completely different, but it prevented her from, she started questioning what she loved. So she lost the joy because what she shared with them, she wrote easily, effortlessly, and with love because she wrote it like herself. And now it's been a year and a half that she's been stuck in this, like, well, how should I write? And the truth is, we can't be happy or free trying to be someone else. But if we allow ourselves our uniqueness, then we allow other people to write like they do and to discover, well, how do I write? Do I prefer short or long sentences? Do I prefer to be present in my work, or do I prefer passive voice and I kind of hide behind data and behind evidence? It doesn't matter. It's and I don't have like one way to, one prescriptive way to write in academia, but I do know that you will have so much more energy and ease if you allow yourself to be you and find your authentic voice. So for me, a simple practice of coming daily to the page and writing, free writing, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, will allow you to first get to know your voice, what you sound like on paper, without. So this, it may seem very simple and it's super powerful. I've seen it in my students and myself. So the daily consistent action of just coming to the page and producing some writing allows us, number one, to grow confidence and self-trust, to take small, consistent steps and keep our promises to ourselves. I said I would write today. I came and I wrote today. Then second is we remove the pressure of performance and we just keep the joy. So instead of the pressure, you're not performing, you're not writing for submission, you're just writing for ourselves. And that gives you the knowledge, the awareness, and the familiarity, allows you to build relationship with your writing. So next time, you do it for a week or two, and next time you come to write about something in your dissertation, and you're writing and you feel the ease is not there, but you already know that ease. You gave yourself that joy when you're just writing for yourself to just hear your voice and just to collect your authentic thoughts and feelings. Then you will know I'm either writing about something I don't want to be writing, or I'm writing about something I don't want to be writing about. So how am I not honoring myself? Am I writing this because my supervisor wants me to write it, but I don't? Then it's a disaster. So self-doubt is really, it's just seeing I just ask people, what is in the way of joy? Because many people don't have to learn the joy of writing. I think when we were kids, we knew the joy of making, cards for our parents or for, just and showing our words to them and saying, Mama, I made it for you, or, sister. And we knew the power of our words and we knew that joy. So it's just what's in the way, what pressures and beliefs, what pressures have we put on ourselves in our writing? So whenever I feel joy is missing, I ask myself, what unrealistic pressure am I putting on myself in my writing right now? And so it's either the time container, or it's it's something unrealistic where I push myself to write like 100 pages in the weekend. Of course I will feel pressure, and so will you. But if I say, well, let me just write one paragraph, or let me just write 3 sentences, what do I think about this for myself? And then there's the foundation and there's kind of the joy. But I think keeping our promises to ourselves consistently removes the self-doubt. And the self-doubt is not in, I always find it easier to speak about self-trust. The trust is not in being perfect or, um, getting a grade or, creating a super thesis. The trust is in any circumstance, any obstacle, any challenge I meet. I will find my wings, and I'm creative enough, I'm resilient enough to find a way through it. And so they say a bird sitting on a branch is not worried about the branch breaking because its trust is not on the branch, its trust is on its wings. And so it's just developing that trust that I will find a way. It will not be perfect, but I will stand by my own side. I will not betray myself. I will be my friend. I will be my supporter. I will encourage and support me through anything, really. And so, from that strength, and if we show up every day to the page or whatever your, you know, realistic, whatever your life allows you realistically, we just say, I made my own promise, I kept my own promise. And we just do our best and it's good enough. Then we can relax about what other people think about our writing, but we don't betray ourselves, we don't abandon ourselves, and we don't give ourselves unrealistic task of writing like someone else, or, we just like, can I discover what I think? Can I allow myself room to grow? I'm a growing scholar. I didn't come to PhD as a seasoned scholar.
Absolutely. But one of the things that you said, Natalya, that I really wanted to kind of pick up on, and I love the phrase that you've used, this idea of coming to the page. And I love it for two reasons. The first reason I love that phrase is the idea of coming to the page for me feels like I'm giving myself permission to show up wholly and authentically as myself. That's the first thing I love about that phrase. The second thing I love about that phrase is I'm coming to the page. I'm not coming to the thesis. So I am now breaking this whole thesis down. I am coming and I'm showing up for one page at a time. And for me, that, really relieves so much of that pressure that we show up to write and think we've got to write, paragraphs on paragraphs and pages and pages and pages and pages. And when we don't, we feel disappointed. We start to doubt ourselves. Like you said, that inner critic comes in and tells us lies about, you're not a good writer. You can't do this. And so this idea of coming to the page feels so freeing on so many levels. And I love that you've said that. I've never heard that before until today. And I'm like, I love that. I love the idea of coming and showing up to the page.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm a tennis player, so I know that before I could compete, I went to a school for athletes. It was 6 to 7 hours a day, 6 days a week of practice. So I know there were thousands upon thousands of hours of practice before I went to competition once a season, once a year. So for some reason, and then, yoga practitioners, they don't say, well, I have a certification. I'm done now. I can do yoga. They come to the mat. They practice. Somehow with writing, we have this idea, I won't be practicing. I'll just sit down and write a dissertation. And it's admirable and it's okay. But I found it's so much easier if I have a writing practice. And so writing practice is permission to try, to discover, to fail better, to try better. And I also want to say one of the biggest shifts in my journey that allowed me to complete was about 6 months before my completion date. I allowed myself to fail. I had to allow myself to fail. I noticed that fear of failing, of never completing, of never getting my PhD was holding me probably by the throat. I felt it was stealing so much energy from me that I decided to look at it. And I went on not a dissertation retreat, look at that. I went on a meditation retreat, silent meditation retreat, and I found such peace. I found such wholeness. When I came out, I was like, well, one of the two things is going to happen. I'm either going to defend or I'm not. And I looked around and there were so many people in this world who didn't have a PhD and they seemed fine. I was like, it's exactly 50-50. And so when I allowed myself that, I didn't stop writing. In fact, my writing took off. I reclaimed the energy that fear was taking from me. I was like, well, I will come and I will write. And then I have to show up to my defense and be in the room. And whatever happens, happens. And I can't tell you how relaxed I became. And I was just watching words on the page changing. And I want to emphasize what you were saying, because I had the privilege of being able to just write the whole day, and I had a job, but it was part-time job. But I know for moms, like sometimes you have a babysitter just twice a week, and that's all you can. You have 2 hours. I don't want I don't want mothers to be discouraged, because I find that if you write one paragraph a day, a page is two paragraphs. So if you write a paragraph a day, in a year, you'll have a dissertation, you'll have 180 pages. If you write two paragraphs a day, you can have, a dissertation in 3 or 4 months. So it's really, you can take 5 minutes at night to plan when your eyes are closed. Maybe you can plan like what paragraph I will write tomorrow. And then you show up, and paragraph is 4 or 5 sentences. So instead of carrying our dissertations on our head and our shoulders all day long and say, well, it's 400 pages, we're like, what one thing can I write about right now? So I discovered the power of instant goals. To me, they remove pressure even further. So permission to fail, and what's your instant goal? So I ask myself, what can I do? What three things can I do in the next 5 minutes? That was my entry question. I can open a new file. I can rename it. I can move my tea closer to myself. I don't know, but it's three things I can do in the next 5 minutes. I can write 3 bullet points, or two, or one, of what comes to mind. And so I am here in this moment as I am, and I'm here to explore and see what happens.
Yeah, I love that, Natalia. You're speaking probably like this is music to my scholarly mama's ears, because we struggle with having the time to show up and having the pressure, and there's so much that comes with that showing up, and to kind of give yourself permission to fail, to not be perfect, to not always be productive in terms of pages or what have you, and just get into the habit of showing up, I think is so, so important. So I wanted to circle back to this idea of writing without the fear, right? I mean, that sounds amazing, of course, but it feels so hard when you're also juggling the kids and PhD. What does that actually look like in real life? How can scholarly mamas listening to this right now start to move in the direction of writing without fear?
Good question, big question. I'll start small, and maybe that's the start. So I would write out my fears. I would just write them, Jenny. I would take 5 minutes and a pen and paper, and I would handwrite all my fears. That's what I did for myself, especially before my defense. I think I came up with 10. And I would go for a walk, or, I would do some chores, and I would come back after a break, and then I would write a response to each fear. I would see if that actually, what are the worst case scenarios that happen? And then I would respond by, what will I do if this in fact happens? So, for example, and that creates miracles in my conversations with my students. So one student, she was so paralyzed by the fear of bad feedback, or the fear of her draft not being accepted. And then we just worked with the worst case scenario. And then what would you do if it happens? And, so many people are afraid of failing at the defense. And do you know what happens? What happens if you fail at the defense? You get some notes, you go away, you make changes, and you come back and defend 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later. But people don't think about that. So we allow our fears to kind of to run circle in our heads. And for me, writing is a friend. It's a space for self-honesty. It's a space for self-trust. So I would tell myself, not anyone else, about my fears, and I would respond. And once I have a strategy for what will I do, and I can see it's not that bad, I can defend 2 weeks later. Or, what's the worst that can happen? And I just respond. Once I have a strategy, I can relax because I have a plan, so that fear does not have to draw energy away from me. So I can allow myself to be creative. I can allow myself to be here. And I want to follow up on one thing when you were transitioning from that point to this one. I want to say there will be weeks, when your kids get sick, when like you just can't get any time in and your attention will be taken by something else. We have to give ourselves some compassion and kindness. But I suggest then you redefine your goal for the week. If your goal was to do 2 pages a day and then your kid gets sick and, it's over, give yourself this goal. Try this goal. My goal is to touch my work lightly and lovingly each day. And if it's for 1 minute, it's enough. It's just not to create a distance. It's to come to my work and lightly touch my draft or lightly touch my ideas. And it can be that you're going to the washroom and you write something down for 1 minute. It's just, I think when we stay away from our work and that distance is created, it's much harder to re-enter. But if you lightly touch your work every day and you say, hey, I'm still here, I'm busy, but you're important too, I'm coming right back, then we stay friends, we stay related, connected. Does that make sense to you? It's a kinder goal. It's doable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That actually leads really nicely into my next question, actually. So obviously a lot of the Scholarly Mama listeners who we know they've already done incredible things. They are raising kids, they have careers, they're managing their research, they're teaching. But when it comes to their writing bit, sometimes that self-trust, like you said, just evaporates. You have one terrible week, the kids are sick, life starts happening, and suddenly I can't do this. So let's talk about that self-trust. How do you help your clients reconnect with that sense of, hey, I can do this when they sit down to write their PhD thesis, even after a terrible week?
That's a very good question. It's a very good, important skill, right? To bounce back and to come back to our work as soon as possible. So I would say one thing is kind of a permission or resolution, promise to myself. This moment is all I have, so I will not give this moment to regret. I will not waste this moment. I will use this moment and the energy and the attention that I have towards my dissertation. So to be kinder, so I would just ask for maybe, if possible, to pause the judgment because it's not productive to see it once and offer yourself kindness and compassion. And then ask myself, what am I ready for right now? What one tiny thing am I ready for right now? And start small. What feels safe, doable? What am I willing to do? What am I ready to do? What am I excited to do? So I would either evaluate my energy and do something small, or I would go with my passion and my fire and I would ask myself, what would I love to write about right now? What paragraph, what sentence would I love to write about? So I will create energy because by connecting to our work, we 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 get that energy back. So it's not about time. It's never about time. It's false. It's about quality of attention that we can bring to our work. It's about the clarity, the focus, the attention, and the energy. And the good news is time is not a renewable resource, but energy is. So we can reset after anything. We owe it to ourselves to reset our energy. It can be a shower. It can be a shaking session, for 15 seconds. It can be gentle stretch, just to embody, to return to our bodies. And then with kindness, we can just ask ourselves, what is one thing that feels safe, that feels exciting? Where do I want to start?
Yeah, I love what you said about time not being, an unlimited resource, but energy being a renewable resource. A lot of times, we focus so much on the time we don't have, how much time we've got, the, time management techniques and all that. And actually, really, we need to be putting our emphasis more on that energy and attention management and really allowing ourselves to, enter into a space of flow and grace when we're coming to the page, as you said earlier, when you're coming to the page. So a lot of our mamas, yeah, they've got little tiny pockets. They've got little, pockets of time that they can try and write, like when the kids are napping or after bedtime. And it can feel so impossible to get into that state of flow, to show up to the page with that flow state. So I'm just curious, what is your take on this? What advice would you give to mamas to make the most out of these scattered writing moments without feeling like they need solid 3, 5, 6, 7 hour blocks to get anything done?
That's such a great question. I'm grateful for that. So a notepad, a bunch of post-its, or a space on the first page of your document, creating bullet points. So there's one method that I call parking downhill. And, at the end of your work, I borrowed it from Hemingway, who was sharing in one of his journals about his practice. But when you come to the point where you know exactly what you're going to say next, what you need to do, you can stop. You can stop and you can jot down a plan for tomorrow, or a separate post-it, and just put them all around it. So around your desk or around yourself, where you have your ideas. So when you come to the page, you can start rolling. Sometimes you can even stop mid-sentence. So when you come back, you pick up exactly where you left. So you park downhill. And I like to do it at the end of my session because I still feel connected to my work. I know what I want to say next. I feel energized. I feel like a champion because met my goal. And so it's a great time to plan. So I would never start a session by planning. To me, it's a misnomer. It's almost as bad as combining writing and editing. So I would always plan either the night before or at the end of the work session when you feel like, wow, I know exactly what to say next. So next time you open the document, you have a bunch of bullet points and you can start there. Or if you come to the page and you're fresh and you have a new idea, ignore it, start somewhere else. But that's there for you, the parking downhill list, little things you can do. Another way to do it is another trick is to start writing, but narrating where you are. So it's almost journaling. And you can do it longhand or you can do it in the document, but you can just start saying, I feel so tired today. I wonder why this chapter is so difficult. I wonder what's keeping me, I wonder. You just start narrating, and the trick is you're already writing. So there will be less of a barrier. And, momentum doesn't happen. We can't force it, but we can create conditions where it's likely to happen. And that's the single focus, and just focusing on one thing and being present. So going deeper rather than like, what are all the things I have to do? Forget something else, but it will come. Does that help?
I think that's some wonderful advice, and definitely some of the techniques that I've had to use during my PhD, especially the, parking downhill, like that really changes the game, because this idea of showing up and then trying to plan what you're going to work on in the session really presents such a barrier, and it really leads to procrastination because you don't want to face the task of having to do that planning. Whereas when you show up to the page, where I'm going to keep using that phrase now, I can't unhear that. When you show up to the page and you have already done that planning, you know exactly where you need to go in that session. You reach that flow state so much quicker. You can just go right into that. And because you've done that planning beforehand and you're not spending the whole session planning. So I think that's brilliant.
I remembered, may I add something to that point?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. About the time, I just want to say, at one point in my life, in 2020, when we were all going through, difficulties, I woke up one day and I felt blind. I couldn't see anything. And I was out of one eye. It was all blurry and gray, and there was like darkness. So I went to my doctor. He rushed me to the emergency room. I had a condition where I was so stressed at work that basically, in simple terms, my brain exploded into my retina and I couldn't see.
Oh my goodness.
So I was facing the possibility of losing my eyesight permanently. And I had to redefine, I had to make a decision because all I love is reading and writing. Everything I do is. So I had to make a decision. Do I give up things I love or do I find a new way? So in 2020, I was forced by my health condition to find a new way. So I wrote four books in 4 years by working 30 to 45 minutes a day on my book, 30 to 45 minutes a day. So it's not hours. It's, I'm happy to say my eyes are better now. My condition has changed. So I'm enjoying that. But I found that because I knew I was resilient enough and creative enough to find some way, and I swore by it. So my eyes could only take 30, 45 minutes, then I experienced extreme pain. So I would just stop and then I would just plan in my head, and next morning I could write again. So, and I'm here to say that it's possible. And many coaches I know, writing coaches, they write 30 minutes a day in the morning. They're moms, and they are the one I'm thinking about. She's writing her 7th book as well. So I'm saying it's nice to have 12 hours to write, and we will all enjoy going on a retreat somewhere in the woods and write. But we don't have to give up on our dreams if we don't have more than 20, 15 minutes. It can be 3 visits to the bathroom with a notepad and writing, jotting down those bullet points that tomorrow or when everyone goes to sleep will allow you to write 1 paragraph or 3 sentences. I would just encourage people to stay connected to their work. That's why I love your goal doesn't have to be 30 pages. Your goal can be, I will come to my work and touch it lightly and lovingly and say, where are you? Hi, here's where I am. So just kind of collecting our thoughts. We can text ourselves questions, to propel us forward. We can text ourselves something we've noticed, something that occurred to us about our work. So you write a note a day, and then after a month, you have 30 notes. So you don't have to start from a blank page. And I want to share something else, if you don't mind, when you were asking how to enter your work. So I always advocate for pre-writing. So many times what's unrealistic is people think I'm going to read this book and I'm going to go directly to writing and I'm going to write about it. It's never happened for me like that. I don't know about you.
No.
So I invented these numbers. They're not research-based, but this is how I see it, how I've seen it in my practice. I say 10% of our time is taken up by reading, 10% is taken up by writing. The space in the middle is the invisible stage. It's pre-writing, it's playing, it's trying, it's failing, it's doodling, it's planning, outlining, redefining, exploring. And without that 80%, we are not able to present ideas that have had time to germinate, come together. So we're trying to write prematurity before clarity is here. And so I always say play, allow yourself to play. Take the time on the page. And then when you come to the writing stage, you have all these ideas that you've tried. So you won't be wondering, you're like, oh, I've tried it. I thought it was a good idea. Just the energy just doesn't go to support it. So I hope that's a kind of way where we can be curious, we can be explorers, we can be courageous, and we can allow ourselves to come to that place and try and see.
Yeah. I love the idea of really what I call thinking time, and like you said, the thinking, conceptualizing, drawing, doodling, just spending time thinking without any expectation that there's going to be 10 pages out of this reference that we've read or this whatever reading we've recently done, but just really allowing our brains. I say to people all the time, so much of a PhD is thinking time. And we don't give ourselves permission to think, permission to really, like you said, get playful with the literature, get playful with how we present our ideas, how we structure arguments, how we construct stories. We feel so constrained by this rigid structure that we need to fit into that we can't explore. And so I just don't think that good work comes from that kind of practice. In order to really produce good work, we need to give ourselves permission to explore, understand, think, conceptualize, draw things. We just need to give ourselves space for that.
And I think in PhD, we're doing two kinds of research. We're doing a research on our research question, our field of study. At the same time, we are doing a research on what kind of a learner I am. How do I go through this and be
Absolutely.
well? What do I need? So we're doing research on the self, and it's as important. It's such a journey. I always say it's a hero's journey. We leave the familiar shore, we go traveling, we come back with a book, but we owe it to ourselves to ask questions. I kept a simple list. I took like a notebook, a notebook. Oh my gosh, can't even show you. Anyways, this one is all filled. But I would just put a line through the page, a vertical line. I kept a log all through my PhD, and I would put minus on the left and plus on the right. And I kept a list of things that are my best strategies, things that are working for me, and things that are not working for me, time wasters, distractions, interruptions. So I could be clear on what's working, what's not, and just doing more of that. So it's for me, writing has always been a friend, a place for self-honesty where I ask myself questions and I answer them. So it was a fascinating journey where I learned so much about myself, and I wasn't the same person when I finished it, which I'm sure you can
Absolutely.
relate
But
to.
I love that idea of, I love thinking about this as a journey because it really truly has been, for me at least, a journey of self-discovery. Like, I really got to know myself on such a deep level because, like you said, you're learning and studying the literature, the topic, the area in which your PhD's in, but you really are also learning so much about yourself. And even as you're also learning and discovering parts of yourself as a mom, you're learning and discovering parts of yourself as a researcher, as a scholar as well, as a writer as well. And I wanted to just circle back to this idea of authenticity and bringing our whole selves to our writing. Sometimes in academia, we've got this, as I said, this pressure of super formal, detached writing that doesn't feel authentic sometimes. But you talk about being more courageous and more authentic. How can you help how do you help your clients to find their voice while they're still meeting those academic expectations that obviously we have to meet? Because obviously that in itself is a bit of a juggling act. So how do you help and support your clients with that?
Well, just today in the conversation I had an hour ago with wonderful student, very talented, brilliant mama. She's been stuck in this chapter for a year and a half because she needed me, to give her permission to write in the way that's natural to her. She needed me to tell her that there's no one way to write. Yes, there are certain guidelines. I would not even say structures. There are guidelines. We all have to write about what's the problem, what's been done, what's the gap, why is our approach valid. That's fine. But she's writing about something she's passionate about and she's caring. And when she wrote it in the way that was natural to her, she even presented her work and people loved it. But then she got this advice from her editor, which friend editor, which was one kind of advice, and then a different kind of advice from her supervisor. And so she got lost in how should I write? And so I think every should we integrate is false. Should creates pressure. So the question is, how could I write? Or how would I love to write? So today, she told me, she's ready to write 30 pages. She's basically ready to write her chapter because we've opened up the block that was really there, permission to when we speak in a unique way. So we each have a way of speaking, reading, thinking, writing, being in this world. It's the fundamental permission to be unique and respect other people's uniqueness. There's no one way to write. And without giving yourself permission to sound like you do, it will be harder to finish it. We can't thrive when we're trying to be someone else or we're trying to perform. And without the daily practice, without coming to the page and just rewriting for ourselves without the pressure of performance, we will never know what our authentic voice sounds like on paper. So I say, come to meet yourself on the page and see what you sound like to you. So it's a self-discovery. I couldn't agree more. It's a self-discovery. And then you find the courage to speak what you see, to stand for the ideas. And, I think PhD is really, we put so many unrealistic pressures. I think it's very simple. Permission to care about something, explore it, and share what we see. That's it. The end. Humbly to say, well,
True.
From where I stand, this is what I see. And if your supervisor says I see something else, that's not a problem because they don't have to see it our way. We just say, well, like maybe we're standing around a tree and you see one side of the tree and I see the other. So based on my experience, my life experience, my social position, based on my life, based on my education, this is what I see. And you're welcome to point out something I don't see, but we just humbly share. This is what I see. This is what evidence points to. And then we allow other people to make conclusions. That's it. It just removes so much pressure. We just have to share what we see and be fully prepared to be wrong. But rarely if people see something, they usually kindly point out, do you know there's this whole other field of literature? Like, wow, thank you so much. But then we don't need to be so stressed about whether other people see it this way or not. If you say, I don't see it this way, I'll be like, fascinating. Tell me about what you see then. Then I can stay curious and humble and respectful. But it doesn't mean I am going to not honor what I see. It will be both.
Yeah, that is really powerful. Really, really powerful. And just a reminder for all of us that to really own our perspective, but understand and respect that, we may see different things from other people, that other people will see different things from what we are seeing, and to just honor that and own that and accept that, really, I think is so powerful. So I'm going to change gears a minute because you mentioned something to me that I'm like, that is so interesting. We need to talk about it, which is this love of cloud watching that you have. I love that, by the way. So, you know how we feel super guilty about taking time for ourselves? How do you give your clients permission to just breathe and think? Like, you love watching clouds. I think that is so amazing. But how do you give your clients permission to relax, breathe, and think throughout this process of writing?
Thank you, Michelle. Well, I invite them to notice that after we inhale, we have to exhale. So after a period of productivity, we need a period of rest. So I invite them to notice how much more productive they can be if they experiment and try to integrate and schedule rest and recovery until they see the value in it. I also demonstrate, I share that when I was in my PhD, sometimes if I had 10 hours to write, I wouldn't write 10 hours straight because I would lose my focus. But what I did, I would write for 15 minutes out of every hour and force myself to rest for 45. And I would do it every hour. And then I was so eager and hungry to come to my work at the top of every hour. And most of the times I would go past the 15-minute stage, but the game was there. It was just a game. And I knew that when I was resting, I could do so much more. Lately, maybe 2 weeks ago, I was revising my book. I revised 28 chapters, and I think a weekend and 2 days, so 4 days. And they're short chapters, but I never planned to do that. But I hit the momentum. And what I did was I scheduled 1,000 walks, 1,000 reset, activities. So I would go for a walk with my book, and I would, so by the end of a 3-hour walk, if it was in the summer, I just felt I walked, but I would find a nice spot. I would sit down and I would revise 5 pages, and then I would walk again and I would do it again. So I can do it all day. If I reset my energy, I can keep going, because we mentioned that energy can be reset. And so one trick is you can treat each hour as a unit of productivity that includes work and rest. So it can be 45 minutes of working, 15 minutes of rest. If you're brave enough, it can be 20 minutes of work, 40 minutes of other chores. I know it's not always rest for moms, but if you regularly come and like touch your work gently, the momentum starts building. And that's that. So I never set out to do the 28 chapters. I was like, well, I'll just do 15 more minutes and then we'll see. And then I'll go for a walk and I'll cook. And then, so I just kept coming, and time was available, and I could feel that the book was talking to me. So in that time, it's very important. If I pushed myself the first day, I would be fried, but I just kept going. So 15, 20 minutes. I don't work without an alarm clock, 25 minutes is what I do. But I need to reset not just my eyes, but my body, my attention. So I would just schedule as much rest and recovery as possible.
Thank you so much for sharing that tip with us. I think the mamas listening to this will, hopefully savor every word that you've shared, because it's such good advice, and not just advice, but from your lived experience, you've actually practiced these things and they have worked for you. And I think it's amazing. And that pressure you talk about, where, you show up to write the thesis, you show up to write the book, like that is too much pressure for anybody to be carrying around. And the idea of just saying, I'm just going to write for 15 minutes and see where that takes me, I think is so much less pressured and stressful than saying, I'm going to sit and write for 5 hours. It just doesn't work.
And if 15 minutes feels too long, tell yourself, I'm just going to write for 2 minutes, or I'm just going to write 2 sentences. That's a good start. It has to be an instant goal.
Yeah. Just being gentle with ourselves is really key, it sounds like. Now, can you tell us about one of your absolute favorite success stories? Maybe you've worked with somebody who's worked on their PhD, had an amazing breakthrough. Can you share one of those stories where something really clicked for one of your clients?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think I can share several stories really briefly, but 2 of my clients surprised me. They were stuck. They were PhD students last year, and they were away from their work for a year, and another person for more than a year, so close to 2 years. But when we started working together, they finished in 3 weeks. So one of them was this December, and she defended in January. So she's
wow.
She's one of our club members, and so we all celebrated with her. But it took 3 weeks of working together, 3 weeks, and they both finished. And so the other person was last year. And then there was a writer who wanted to write a book, and she shared that her goal is to write a first draft in 8 weeks. And I thought, I love ambitious goals, and I thought that was too much as well. But she finished in 5.5 weeks as well.
Wow.
Permission to be yourself and to write. It was just removing. When I work with my clients, I remove the fears and the pressures. I would just look at what's in the way. And the final example I'll share is there was a student who was stuck and couldn't share anything with her supervisor for years. I think she was in her 8th year of her PhD. You know how much harder it gets, like there are stories of guilt and shame. And we worked on the worst case scenario. What's the worst that can happen? And we worked through it, and we created a plan, a strategy for what would happen. So in 1 week, I think maybe a week and a half, she submitted 3 things. She submitted 2 chapters, an older and a chapter she finished to her supervisor, and she submitted a book chapter to a collection that was accepted. So she went from 0 to submitting 3 things in a short period of time by just working with the worst fear, of rejection, humiliation, right? Like bad feedback, but it's just building. It's never learning new skills. It's unlearning and like removing pressures, stresses, any heaviness, anything that makes, like for me, I always say writing is a form of flying. So what's pulling you down? The weather always looks good for flying. And we just remove what's in the way. And I hope, and often it's the self-doubt. So I always say, may you lose the self-doubt and let your soul fly.
So powerful. So powerful, Natalya. Amazing.
Thank you.
So now that we've come to the end of our time together, how can people get in touch with you? They've probably listened to this and thought, oh my goodness, she is absolutely amazing. I want to follow her. I want to work with her. How can they get in touch with you?
Thank you so much, Michelle. I'm on Instagram. That's the only social media I have. It's Natalya_Androsova_. I think we'll include some links, right, with the podcast. But my
Yes, we
website, my humble website is writingdissertationcoach, all one word, .com. And I share everything there. I offer coaching, and I offer retreats and groups, and I have my wonderful club for people it's based on my book, Dissertation Without Tears, and I call it Writing Without Tears. So it's just rediscovering the joy of writing. And also, like, my goal is always creating a revolution of kindness and self-compassion, because academia is not set up for that. So I feel we can help each other and support each other find that kindness and self-compassion. And from that, the energy, the creativity, they're all available. So I'm never saying we're learning anything, we're discovering what's inherently here, the freedom to express that.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for being here, but not just being here. This has been an interesting recording with the coughing and the colds and everything going on. And you've been so incredibly patient and compassionate. So I thank you for that. And I thank you for coming on here and sharing your heart, sharing your amazing work, and just you're just an amazing person. So thank you for coming and sharing with all of us.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I feel the same way. I feel so honored to have this conversation with you. Thanks for persevering.
Thank you for tuning in to the Mrs. Mummy PhD podcast. I hope you've enjoyed the episode, and if you did and you want in on this movement, please head over to mrsmummyphd.com or scholarlymamas.com. If you want to do your PhD well without sacrificing yourself or those you love dearest, then you need your hands on all the ways that we can work together to transform your journey of scholarly motherhood from one of overwhelm, disillusionment and burnout to one of scholarly joy and purposeful success. Make sure you head over to mrsmummyphd.com. I'll leave a link in the show notes. I cannot wait to work with you. Remember, Mama, these are our journeys of becoming.